Hi everyone, and welcome to Jane Talks Murder, where I'll be talking about and reviewing an episode of Poirot, Murder, She Wrote, Diagnosis Murder, or Jonathan Creek. Today, I'm going to be looking at Poirot, How Does Your Garden Grow? Or as I like to call it that time, Poirot Blossomed. We begin the episode with this dramatic building. Wow, how big do you want your art? And these two guys have a whisper conversation before one of them goes downstairs to see this lady who gives him an envelope. What the fuck? Nah, that just means Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Is that a bust of Poirot? Speaking of, he's bought something because apparently he's a flower now. Okay then. While this lady gets checked over by the doctor. Wait, I know her. She played the psychic dream-having grandmother in Jonathan Creek's The Eyes of Tiresias. The postman comes, so Amelia rings her little bell, and when Katrina goes to collect it, Mary gives her shit. Poirot spruces himself up before attending the Chelsea Flower Show, which the characters we've met so far are also at, with Amelia complaining she's had a wine bill that Mary blames Henry for. Poirot gives a speech about the rose that's named after him, smile for the cameras, and Jap shows up while Henry shit-talks Katrina, who leaves Amelia next to the seeds, and she on purpose rams Poirot. She sees Katrina talking to someone, so she announces her name loudly and shoves a packet of seeds into Poirot's pocket.
I'm sure you'll find them quite a revelation.
Before Katrina comes rushing back with Mary giving her shit again. Jap, Hastings and Poirot have dessert where Poirot passes around the packet, which is, to his confusion, empty, and Katrina picks up some pills. Back home, Poirot finally opens his mail, which contains a letter from Amelia, which says something is wrong in the house. Mary's a bit shifty, Henry likes to drink, and she doesn't trust Katrina, who gives her one of her pills before they all sit down to dinner. Poirot thinks the seed packet holds a message and asks Miss Lemon to go with her to Amelia's house the next day. Katrina goes around kissing stuff as Amelia listens to music, and Mary tends to the garden. Uh-oh, something's up with Amelia, the crash bringing Katrina running, but Mary thinks she's done something. The next day, Hastings is left to try and figure out Miss Lemon's filing system as she and Poirot make it to the house. Although Poirot is sus of this guy and then finds a silver bell in the garden. You know, like Mary. Lucy breaks the news that Amelia died last night and invites them in, where Katrina rambles on about something in writing, and Mary introduces herself and Henry, who asks if he's there about the Russians, so Poirot leaves, running into Jap, whose men have the place under surveillance. The coroner says Amelia was poisoned, but it wasn't the food because Miss Lemon had already investigated, and she couldn't have been given it on the sly, because it's very bitter, she would have noticed, but it happened somehow. I mean, the obvious thing is the pill Katrina gave her, but let's face it, Christy doesn't go for the obvious thing. So they go to the doctor, who reveals Mary and Henry relied on Amelia, seeing as they lost their money in the stock market, so they probably bumped her off for her money, while Katrina had no motive, but Poirot isn't sure. Poirot goes to bug Amelia's solicitor about the contents of her will, but he doesn't want to break confidentiality, so instead tells Poirot through the medium of horses that Katrina is to inherit everything. Poirot goes to tell this to Jap, who yells at his two officers for letting Katrina slip out, and Mary is outraged that Amelia has been murdered, so have a lie down. They toss Katrina's room and discover the poison bottle amongst her belongings, and they go to the embassy, who say they've never heard of her, and Poirot concludes that Katrina is not her real name, and to check out Russian churches in order to find her. Back home, Hastings is in a muddle, and Miss Lemon tells him to stop interfering, before Poirot asks her for advice about the case, and realizes what the seed packet was trying to tell him. He finds Katrina at the church, who is mad that everyone thinks she's a murderer, and they talk about her life in Russia, while Jap says Catherine, aka Katrina, was spelt out on the seed packet, so Katrina hands herself in. They all get home, Miss Lemon horrified by the state of the paperwork, and Jap is pissed that Poirot isn't letting this case close. But not as pissed as Miss Lemon.
What is this?
Hastings, telling off, gives Poirot the answer he needs, and he sends Miss Lemon to a fishmonger, while Poirot visits Mary and Henry to tell them what's up with the seed packet. Not Catherine the Great.
Stocks.
And whips out forged letters and accuses the pair of murder.
Mr. Poirot, is this melodrama essential?
Always! Poirot says the shells lining the garden are oyster shells, Amelia's favourite, which Mary bought, so she legs it, but obviously she's caught, where she has a freak out over losing her garden to Katrina, and then arms herself, where she explains how she dosed the oysters and got rid of the shells afterwards. Oh, she's off again. She tries to kill herself by drinking weed killer, but it's Henry's secret stash of booze.
Whiskey?
and she goes ballistic as she and Henry are arrested. Katrina is released where she hooks up with her beau, and afterwards, Hastings realizes he's allergic to Poirot's overpriced cologne, so he kicks everyone out. Okay, even though some of my favourite episodes are the feature-length ones like Evil Under the Sun and Death on the Nile, I prefer the episodes that come in under an hour because they're neater, more succinct, and leave less room for filler or plot threads that go nowhere. And this episode is a prime example. The mystery is set up, investigated, and solved in 50 minutes, and the clues are cleverly in plain sight for you to work out. Most obvious is the title of the episode, followed by a character called Mary who tends to the garden filled with shells and a silver bell. They spell out the killer for you in a children's nursery rhyme, but still manage to lead you to believe Katrina could have done it with her initial ramblings to Poirot about the will, giving her motive, and Catherine, or Katrina in Russian, being on the seed packet, even though Stocks was the clue having been mentioned previously by the doctor. Then of course we have the shells. The camera focuses on them a few times, but you can only put it together with the doc mentioning Amelia's soft spot for shellfish, and the coroner saying the poison would taste bitter, and then all the pieces fall into place. Even though I'm not really clear on the Russian embassy who Katrina really is part, because half of it was in Russian and half was Henry using slang terms when talking about her, but no matter. I love that Miss Lemon got to be in the middle of the investigation and help out. Her reactions to things are always a fun time. And our killer was sufficiently nutty, akin to Rowena Drake in Halloween Party, and very much reminds me of Louise Bergman in my latest Jonathan Creek review. What can I say? I love it when the slightly older ladies go a bit wackadoo. We have one victim, Amelia Barrowby, who was fed poisoned oysters by our killer, Mary Delafontaine, who did it because she was in financial trouble, and also tried to pin the crime on Katrina Rager because she would inherit everything, with the help of her accomplice, Henry Delafontaine, who just kind of went along with it, I guess. So there you have it. That was How Does Your Garden Grow? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or come say hi on social media. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit that like button, it really does mean a lot, or consider subscribing if you want to keep investigating with me. Alternatively, feel free to check out my other YouTube channels. Thank you so much for watching, I'll speak to you soon, and keep an eye out for clues.